If I may have your attention, this is a rare and unique event, and I will tell you about it. I'm Jason Scorza. I am Vice Provost for International Education here at Fairleigh Dickinson University. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 10th anniversary gala of the United Nations Pathways program at Fairleigh Dickinson University. We are here for two reasons. The first is to celebrate that anniversary of a very, very cold, windy night in February in 2002 when the university first came together to talk about the United Nations, to talk about world affairs, to talk about diplomacy. Since that night in February in 2002, we have had 77 UN Pathways dinners and forums and 46 UN Pathways video conferences. We have entertained, if entertainment is the correct term, more than 150 senior officials and diplomats from the United Nations system, and we have had thousands of students, alumni, faculty, and friends participate in our events. And we think had their eyes opened to the interest of the UN, to the wonders of the world of diplomacy, and to the importance of global learning. And through those 10 years, the one constant has been Ambassador Ahmad Kamal, which brings me to the second reason why we are gathered here tonight, which is to pay tribute to Kamal and his contributions to the university and to the world of diplomacy. You know, when I told Kamal that we intended to honor him, he immediately said, no, you couldn't possibly do that. I am not worthy, he said, of such a fuss. He went on to say that humility was one of his finest qualities. And he spoke on this theme at quite some length. Therefore, in order to persuade him to come and spend the evening with us tonight in this fashion, I had to assure him that we would expose him to what Americans refer to as a roast. You know, those of you who are younger than me, which I would say is about half of you, the tradition of the celebrity roast was invented, you might say, in the generation of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all those grand old entertainers. And what they would do is, under the facade of paying tribute to a friend and colleague, they would subject that friend and colleague to endless ridicule and abuse. And this, Kamal said, is the kind of tribute that he deserves. Well, we'll see. We're going to do both tonight. We're going to roast Kamal, we're going to celebrate Kamal, and we are also going to award Ambassador Kamal with one of the university's highest distinctions, the Presidential Citation. So what I'd like to do very briefly is describe how the program is going to work. First, you should be enjoying your starters. That's okay. They are meant to be eaten. After these very brief preliminaries, we are going to be treated to a conversation with Ambassador Kamal. He will be interviewed by our good friend Ramu Damodaran, who is Deputy Director for Partnerships and Public Engagement at the United Nations Department of Public Information's Outreach Division, earning the award for possibly the longest title in the UN system, maybe second longest. We are going to subject the ambassador to the treatment that he has given so many of our distinguished diplomatic colleagues in the past. And for this purpose, I had to bring in a real professional. And friend Ramu is just such a professional. Following the conversation, which will run about 45 minutes, we will open the floor to some comments, some tributes, if you will, to Kamal, to members of the diplomatic fraternity and diplomatic sorority, as the case may be, and also some other friends and colleagues of long standing. That will be their opportunity to tell their favorite Kamal story, to provide insight into the mysteries that are Kamal, possibly to provide us with information that would be of interest to Interpol. Purely on an anonymous basis, I assure you. There'll be none of that. That's right out. And then a bit later in the evening, we will drag Kamal back on stage to receive the honor that he richly deserves. And the program will round out by a very special performance by the UN Staff Recreation Council Singers, AKA the UN Singers, who are the most wonderful performers. They've come all the way to Manhattan to be with us tonight, and you shall not leave until you've heard them, or you will truly regret it. I have no more threats. I do have a few people that I would like to recognize in the audience today. We are honored to have with us some very, very prominent members of the UN family. With us tonight is His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Sidi Diarra, who is UN Undersecretary General. Sir. We are delighted to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Abdullah Al-Mulimi of Saudi Arabia. We are fortunate to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Zahir Tanin of Afghanistan. With us tonight is Ambassador Leila Ratzi van Darhima Mamna, please, my apologies, until recently of the African Union. And I will hasten to add a Fairleigh Dickinson University alum. Yes. I would like to recognize another distinguished gentleman, Ambassador Dr. Donatus Saint Ami of St. Lucia. Are you present, sir? If this were a competition, His Excellency would win. He has 2 degrees from Fairleigh Dickinson University. I would like to recognize Jeffrey Laurenti, Senior Fellow at the Century Foundation on International Affairs. I would like to recognize Dr. Helene Sastarish Barsamian and Mr. Barsamian, old friends of Ambassador Kamal. And I would like to make a special recognition to Dr. and Mrs. Friedrich Hals-Offel, who introduced us to Kamal many, many years ago. So in many ways, you are the father of the UN Pathways program. We also have with us today several members of the University Board of Trustees and the University Alumni Board of Governors. Please, if you would stand when I call your name. Trustee Mary Kay Stratus. Trustee Robert Sartorelli. Trustee Winston Lowe, possibly still in traffic. Trustee Donna Markey. Trustee Stuart Krentzman. Trustee Ann Petroselli. Former Trustee Nick Agostino. Former Trustee Robert Budelman. Alumni Board of Governors Warren Oates. Alumni Board of Governors Carol Knopf. Alumni Board of Governors Wayne Howard. Alumni Board of Governors Lori Lee Dixon. And Alumni Board of Governors Barbara Stewart. Thank you all for being with us here tonight. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and recognize another very special guest, and that is Madame Kamal, who is here with us tonight after generously allowing us to borrow Kamal for so many late Tuesday nights. semester after semester, year after year. Madame, we are certain that you are either the most fortunate or the least fortunate of women. We do not know which. This is between you and Kamal, but we would like to show you a very simple token of our appreciation for your support of our program and for coming to be with us here tonight. Who has the gift? Tiara, do you? If you would. Or I could. I will. I must, after this frivolity, introduce a more somber note to the proceedings by reminding everyone of two individuals who are unable to be with us tonight, and that is, of course, Michael and Susan Adams. We're all aware of Michael's struggle, and our thoughts and prayers are, of course, all with him. It's important, though, to pause and reflect about how much the university owes to Michael and Susan for our global learning mission, for our global learning programs. I think it's no exaggeration to say that without Michael and Susan, we would not be here tonight. Now, if you know Michael, and I know many of you know him very well, he is not one to be silenced by such an inconvenience of not being here. So he has sent a message to us, who will be shared with us by University Provost Christopher Capilano. Chris.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who are here with your Valentine this evening, we're supposed to pay for dinner. You're welcome. I have a few additional introductions, recognitions actually, and thanks to make. Only a few before I read a special message from President Adams to our distinguished honoree this evening, Ambassador Kamal. First, and please hold your applause until I complete my remarks. First, Dr. Michael Sperling, Provost of Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, New York, is with us this evening. Michael, please stand. Michael is a dear friend of the university, spent many years here, not only in the psychology department with me in our early years, but also as the Associate Provost for Global Learning. And it was under Michael's leadership that the UN Pathways program was initiated. Thank you, Mike. Dr. Jason Scorza, Vice Provost for International Education, and Dr. Joanne Murphy, Director of Partnership of Programs with intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations. Thank you both. Please rise, Jason and Joanne. She's there somewhere. Thank you both for planning this evening's program and for the many things that you do to make the UN Pathways program such a success. Dr. Ken Green, Provost of the College at Florham and Senior Vice President for Government and Community Affairs. Ken, please stand. Ken, thanks for the many events, UN Pathways events that you have hosted and special dinners that you've attended on behalf of the university and the program. Also, Dr. Joseph Kiernan, campus of our Metropolitan campus, I should say, I'm sorry, Provost of our Metropolitan campus and Senior Vice Provost for Institutional Effectiveness. Joseph could not be here this evening. He has a class, I believe, but I did want to thank him for all that he has done with respect to hosting events and dinners on his campus. Collectively, I'd also like to thank all the student volunteers, as well as the student interns who have worked behind the scenes to make our UN Pathways program event such a success for over a decade now. For those that are in attendance, please stand and be recognized. I have a message from President Michael Adams to Ambassador Kamal, which I will read at this time. My dear friend and colleague, Ahmad Kamal, I am deeply sorry I'm unable to join you this evening to recognize and celebrate all that you have done with and for Fairleigh Dickinson University. I recall with fondness our first meeting. It was arranged by our mutual friend, Friedrich Hotzhoffel, I was warned about your insightful mind, your penetrating questions, and that you were forthright in both ideas and words. Together, we found alignment of ideas and recognition of opportunities around higher education and the aims of the United Nations. Because of that alignment, we began what is now a decade-long success story. Because of your passion for global education, your unique position of influence and insight, you have been the dynamic force for a program that has influenced and transformed the lives of so many students. Through our work together, we have welcomed to campus nearly 100 ambassadors and diplomats. These global leaders enlightened us on world affairs, presented us with new viewpoints, and inspired us to make a difference in the world. As I've said many times, when students interact with people of such influence, they gain confidence and strengthen the belief that they too can play roles that influence and change the world. The institutional links have been strong and have grown deeper with each year. Fueled by our enthusiasm and expertise, FDU and the United Nations have built deep layers of interaction. FDU today is a well-known and well-respected institution in the quarters of the UN headquarters. Fairleigh Dickinson has special status both within the UN Department of Public Information and the UN Economic and Social Council. Faculty have been appointed to serve on NGO committees. Students have served in youth assemblies and internships, and with you, the university played an important role in founding the UN Academic Impact, an alliance between the UN and higher education around the world. None of this would have been possible without you and your follow-up from the first conversation we shared together. You once said, we have a great marriage between a university that is truly interested in the rest of the world and an international organization that is a true forum for the entire world. This is certainly true, but organizations don't build relationships. People do. In this relationship, you have been the integrative force, the nurturing hand, and the guiding voice. For all this and more, we thank you and salute you for a decade's worth of global lessons and for providing a foundation that will create the next generation of citizens going forward. Fondly and with great admiration, Michael Adams. Thank you, and I hope everyone enjoys this evening.
Thank you, Chris. I think I may have omitted to pay proper recognition to another member of our Board of Trustees, Trustee John Carskadden, also a member of the Board of Governors. Would you please? I would now like to recognize the students of Fairleigh Dickinson University, who are the real reason why Ambassador Kamal comes back to us semester after semester, year after year. It's certainly not to talk to professors like me. It's to engage the bright young minds of the future. I'd like the students in the room, if you could please stand to be recognized. Your deep commitment to learning is an inspiration to all of us and is a reason why I and our next speaker, Dr. Joanne Murphy, Director of UN and NGO Programs at FDU, wake up so early in the morning and stay up so late at night to do programs like this. Dr. Murphy, would you please?
Distinguished guests, family, and FDU friends, we are so happy to have you here this evening, and it is a great pleasure for us to share with you Valentine's evening. Now, just imagine, for the first time in the history of the world, Ambassador Kamal is a Valentine of a room full of FDU women. Now, Ambassador Kamal and I have been working together for the past few years to continue the UN Pathways tradition at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Now I'm thinking, Ambassador Kamal never, ever imagined that I would be his Valentine in 2012. And of course, you know I never imagined that as well. I'd like to thank you, Madam Kamal, for sharing him with us. Getting more serious, I would like to share with you an excerpt from a book written by President Adams and Angelo Carfagna entitled Coming of Age in a Globalized World. Active world citizens are able not only to make connections among pieces of information, they are able to cross boundaries and connect with people from different backgrounds who have different worldviews. These connections are the only way to effectively respond to international challenges and crises. They are the best hope for a future marked by peace and tolerance, rather than violence and prejudice. This is what the UN Pathways program is all about, and I'm going to speak to you a bit briefly about the UN Pathways program and the student experience. We have students from 85 countries from all over the world. Our student body contributes to defining what we provide for them as educational opportunities that are relevant to their life experience and their future dreams. Given the legacy left for us by our founder, Dr. Peter Sammartino, we have embraced the privilege of preparing our students to assume the responsibilities of global leadership, whatever may be their field of endeavor, and that is really exciting for us. Number one, we assume that each student walking through our doors may potentially be a future president of the United States or leader of any other country in the world. Two, we accept that a future Secretary General of the United Nations may be studying in our classrooms. Three, we understand that one of our students may one day take on a pivotal role in negotiating peace treaties and nuclear arms elimination agreements. And lastly, but not leastly, yes, we are aware that even the mother of a future world leader may be a student within our midst and under our tutelage, and that role is equally as important as any of the others. Now, what does all of this have to do with the UN Pathways program? For a decade now, Fairleigh Dickinson University has been inviting ambassadors from many diverse countries to enlighten our students by sharing with them their knowledge and their experience. Since 2008, we have expanded our programming to include our becoming the first entire university in the world to apply for and receive accreditation from the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations as a non-governmental organization with special consultative status. We began opening more doors at the United Nations for our students to learn on-site by regularly attending briefings on multiple diverse issues related to the UN mission. We became a member of the Conference of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, in relationship with the United Nations, and covering all of the different aspects of the critical UN agenda with faculty members from both of our campuses representing FDU in many different substantive non-governmental organization committees. We subsequently took on a leadership role in that organization with the intent of contributing to its reform and revitalization as a gateway for the engagement of civil society organizations with the United Nations and its mission. Recently, we were elected to the UN Department of Public Information Non-Governmental Organization Executive Committee. Yet another opportunity for FDU to work closely with the UN system and other NGOs to support realization of critical goals and objectives for our planet and its population. In a nutshell, all of these achievements and open doors enable FDU students and faculty to access learning opportunities and possibilities to serve through us in partnership with that system and other NGOs to make our world a more livable and humane place in which we coexist with many billions of other humans and life forms. The educational resources of the UN Pathways create a treasure of experiential learning settings within which our students are enabled to observe, learn, and participate within the world's premier global institution with people from all over the world. As a result, they leave our campuses ready to hit the ground running as full-fledged global citizens, blessed with having Ambassador Kamal and some of the world's leading diplomats as their teachers. In closing, I would like to introduce you to a few of our stellar students and recent graduates who are actively engaged in emerging into global citizenship with a deep sense of commitment and social responsibility to ensure that they transform our world into a much better place than my generation has bequeathed them. Students, as I call your name, please stand quickly so that we may see you, and then you may sit down. Sarah Horn from Germany. Tiara Sufina Azli from Malaysia. Reem Al-Ayadi from Saudi Arabia. Maureen Omolo from Kenya. Matt Sisko from the United States. Liang Ren from China. Brian Choi from the United States. Hossam Shaheen from Egypt. Khadija Alami from Yemen. Yassine El Kariani from Morocco. And Bianjana Tapa from Nepal. Thank you. It is because of them that I love coming to work every single day. Sleep is not essential. Jason and I cannot do this work alone, so we invite FDU faculty members to contribute their time and expertise. One of our faculty members is truly outstanding and has made exceptional personal sacrifices of time, resources, and energy to ensure that FDU students are at the UN frequently, on the front lines, to learn about sustainable development, poverty eradication, nuclear disarmament, the rights of the world's indigenous peoples, and so on. Professor Deli Gönike, would you please stand? All I can say is that her contribution is priceless. I have had the pleasure of traveling many places in our world and working with the UN system in Africa. In spite of all that I have seen and experienced, I must admit that I stand in awe of the extraordinary achievements that President Adams has made for this university in creating a learning environment and external relationships that enable this institution to assume a leading role in preparing global citizens to assume stewardship for our world. He is truly an inspiration for me to give of my personal best to FDU. In closing, I would like to leave you with an additional thought from President Adams and Angelo Carfagna's book, Coming of Global Age in a Globalized World. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot shrink from the realities of interdependence and strike out all that is different and new. We cannot allow blind nationalism to arbitrarily divide people. We must continue to cherish our unique cultural identities as patriots, but we cannot use them to escape from common responsibilities as world citizens. And so we go forth in partnership with the United Nations and our students. Thank you.
So without further preamble, I would like very much to call to the platform Ambassador Ahmad Kamal and Mr. Ramu Damadorn.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Ambassador Kamal. With your indulgence, I think the first couple of minutes should be about me. And I've been trying to identify the very attractive young lady whom I spoke to about an hour ago during the wine and cheese reception, who came up to me and said, "I've heard so much about you, it's good to finally meet you." And I said, "Thank you." And she said, "Is this your first visit here?" So I said, "Yes." She said, "I expect that you normally come to the Teaneck campus." So I said, "No, I haven't been there either." And she said, "Aren't you Ambassador Kamal?" So for the sake of that young lady, this is the real Ambassador Kamal. So you can be illusioned, if you will, and meet him after this session. I also wanted to touch upon a point that was made by both Jason and Joanne. Why exactly did you choose to do this evening? Was it because, as many of us at the UN believe, you are an incurable romanticist? Or is it because you really wanted to see who your true friends were who would come for an evening in Convent Station rather than being home with their Valentines?
I did not choose the day or the evening. I was volunteered, and under false pretenses, the provost said to me, "Please come for a dinner because we have a statue of you with a hand outraised like this, more or less of the same type as Mao Zedong in Tiananmen Square." And so I felt properly humbled, and also I thought this was a proper recognition of my qualities. So I agreed. And I find now that it is entirely under false pretenses that I have been inveigled here.
Well, I mean, I should add in full disclosure that the statue to which we are referring is a statue of Ambassador Kamal on the north lawn of the United Nations, which has been temporarily displaced because of the capital master plan. We're doing this renovation of the UN, so all kinds of things are moving here and there, but that statue will be back in situ as of November 2013. So that is assured. But the other point that struck me this evening is how everyone seems to refer to you by your last name, Kamal. Now, this makes sense to me as well, if not essentially a compatriot, a neighbor of yours, because the word Kamal in both Urdu and Hindi means wonder, marvel. And do you encourage people to call you Kamal because of that, or do you?
Obviously, the word Kamal in Arabic or in Hindi or in Urdu means perfection. Of which I am the proper incarnation in this world.
That point is well taken. Going on further to the point of perfection, I wonder if we could perhaps again, reflect a little more about our common heritage, so to speak, because as you know, India and Pakistan, or Pakistan and India, share 5,000 years of recorded history. 4,935 of them India's, 65 Pakistan's. But having said that, I wonder if you would reflect upon something about the dynamics of our subcontinent, both from your perspective now, as, if you will, a senior statesman of the UN, and from your days as a vigorous permanent representative of Pakistan.
Well, by now you should know that size does not matter. It is the quality of those 65 years which outweigh the 5,000 years that you are referring to so facilely.
And
nothing. The statement stands on its own merit.
To go back to another point where I think to reflect your own analogy of the 5,000 years working to the present, you've often talked about India and Pakistan working together in fora such as the international trade negotiations, and you were responsible primarily, I think, for the developing world's point of view, which led to the establishment of the World Trade Organization. Now that you have, in a sense, left that behind, do you feel that the international trade regime that the WTO brought to mind has been fair to the expectations that you had, that India had, that the developing world had?
Now, this is a serious question on a non-serious evening. The fact of the matter is that the negotiations of the Uruguay round, which led to the establishment of the World Trade Organization, showed a remarkable coincidence of views between the ambassadors of India and the ambassador of Pakistan, yours truly. And we found that the fact that we could work together is what ultimately led to the success of the Uruguay round negotiations from the point of view of the developing countries. So it was a great occasion for collaboration and, in my opinion, a historical event. The problem, of course, was that you are faced with a bunch of countries normally referred to as the developed world, otherwise referred to as the white man's club, who are not interested in India and Pakistan coming together. Because India and Pakistan coming together is a formidable force in the world. And so there is a great desire, a repressed desire, to see us on separate sides of the table, which is unfortunate, but true.
Well, if I can follow up on that by another serious question on a non-serious evening, you've also been primarily responsible and instrumental, I think, for the entire United Nations response to the emergence of information technology and the internet in the 1990s. Now, you do see in this country, particularly bumper stickers and cars in some parts of this country saying the UN is out to seize internet governance. Now, were the UN to do so, and were you to be put in charge of that governance, what would you do?
Well, if you analyze the internet, it is controlled by only one country, which we shall not name out of politeness to the soil on which we stand. And so the point of view that I have been putting forward now for 20 years is that since this is a tool which knows no boundaries in a globalized world, therefore it has to be run by a globalized system of governance. And that globalized system of governance can only be ensured by the United Nations, not as the United Nations of member states, but as the United Nations as a forum which can bring together member states, which is governments, civil society, which is the users, and the private sector, which is the entrepreneurs who fund the whole process. And these three stakeholders, the only place where they can come together is at the United Nations itself. Now that is what we have been saying, but unfortunately it falls on deaf ears.
But is there a way forward now that the internet has become so much more defined and in a sense has developed in countries other than the one which launched it in the first place?
Yeah, slowly, because no system which is uneven or in which there is such a big gap between the ownership of decision making and the utilization by others, the gap is so great that it is not sustainable. And therefore there is no doubt in my mind that sooner or later the question of internet governance will come back into the multilateral forum.
I think what you're, in a sense, also referring there is the essential misunderstanding or the lack of understanding, if you will, of a country or a group of countries about other countries which do want their voice heard and which do have a role to play. And if you take that analogy further, I was struck by an observation you'd once made about how the West completely misunderstands the role of faith and religion in the developing world, and particularly in our part of the world, where religion is really a way of life. It's not just, to use your phrase, an accessory. You can't tackle it or tinker with it as something which is incidental. You have to deal with it as something that is relevant to the entire being. How far do you see that is true of the discourse of world polity today?
It's once again, you've asked an extremely serious question. The problem is, let's drop the word religion because it upsets some people. Let's replace it with the word spiritual underpinnings. You have to base your thinking and your relationships against the yardstick of spiritual underpinnings. And all of us have some degree of spiritual underpinnings, either in Judaism or in Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever, or Confucianism or Taoism. The question is that you have to have spiritual underpinnings, and you cannot just put them on the back banner under this new word which has been evolved in this country, which is called secularism, which is basically a denial of religion and a denial of spiritual underpinnings and a replacement of spiritual underpinnings by the concept of money. I think this is not, once again, this is not a sustainable concept. And so you see that the worm is turning slowly, and already there is a growth of spiritualism in the world because we have come to the limits of materialism and worship of money.
What were your, that's a fascinating word, underpinnings. What were your intellectual underpinnings? What brought you to where you are, both in the Pakistan Foreign Service, at the United Nations, and I think most importantly to all of us here, to this program at Fairleigh Dickinson University and the Ambassadors Club?
Well, you're asking me to divulge a personal secret. But I was brought up in France, which is the country of love and pretty girls and kisses and all the pleasures of life. And so my approach to life is very French. And, and I can only suggest to everybody here that you should go to France and learn how to live life as the French live.
And having said that, if you were to believe that that is going to be the underpinning, what is it really that you feel that a most un-French institution, if I may, like the United Nations, can do to support you in that endeavor?
The UN has a long way to go. You know it, and I know it, that it is only 65 years old, and one would have thought that by now it would be at least mature, but it isn't yet. It is not yet mature because it suffers from a fundamental disease. And that fundamental disease is that it was established in 1945 by 4 and only 4 countries. And so People think that it is a multilateral global institution. It is not. It is a private club set up by 4 people to which they added on a 5th. And so it's a private golf club of 5 members. Everybody else is an associate member, but not a real member. And now this is in a country and in an age where we are spoken to ad nauseum about democracy. It is not democratic. You cannot have a system in which, in today's world, you have 5 countries, each one of which has, number 1, permanence, which is an attribute of God, and number 2, the veto, which means that one of these countries can stand on one side and 192 countries can vote on the other side, and that one vote weighs more than 192 votes. For 1,000 years, we have been talking about democracy, and yet in the United Nations, we are forced to accept this as a status quo, which is part of the rules of the game. And now the question, sir, is, are you willing to challenge the rules of the game? And if not, then let us put it to the vote here, and you will find that I can produce a vast majority in this room which will vote with me against this concept of permanent membership and the veto.
If I could elaborate upon that and see whether instead of, there we are, there's your majority for you.
Yeah, the verdict is there.
The verdict is in, absolutely.
This is in what we call in the United Nations, agreed by acclamation.
Endorsed by acclamation, absolutely. But I wondered if you could also reflect upon the other argument as a former chairman yourself of the UN Budgetary and Administrative Committee. You have this very strange equivalence right now where affluent nations like the United States, and I think only yesterday President Obama has put in his fiscal requirements for 2013, which are the highest in his term of office for foreign affairs. So you have this instance of the major developing countries sustaining the UN with funds, while the major developing countries like Pakistan, like India, like Bangladesh, like a number of countries in Africa and South Asia, provide troops, which the West is not able to provide. Is there some sort of a moral equivalence or lack of equivalence there?
Yeah, this is the problem of peacekeeping, in which the money comes from the richer countries and the blood comes from the poorer countries. And so in the UN we say this is money against blood. But that is not the real problem. The real problem, and Under Secretary Diara is sitting here, the real problem is that most people will tell you that money is flowing from the richer countries to the poor countries, that there is a flow of funds from the rich to the poor. It's just not true. There are reverse flows which are taking place. There's at least $1 trillion a year which is coming back from the poor countries to the rich countries every year. And so what is happening in the world is really a case of double jeopardy. Firstly, there's inadequate funds going from the rich to the poor. And secondly, the poorer countries are being forced to send back more and more money to the richer countries every year. And these are World Bank figures. Don't trust Kamal on this.
Well, that in a sense brings us to what Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, said right here at Fairleigh Dickinson in 2008, I believe, that governments cannot do it alone, and that the UN is looking for a range of new partners. And I think one of your remarkable achievements, if I may say so hesitantly, has been to identify a number of these key partners, notably in the student, governmental, and academic communities. How far do you think that partnership is working, both from the UN side and I think more important from the side of our allies?
Well, this is, as you know, because this has been a common jihad of both you and me, which is to create a closer relationship between universities and the United Nations. And it is succeeding. It is succeeding at Fairleigh Dickinson because this is really the apex of the system. It goes back 10 years and is a very successful relationship. But it is spreading to other universities also. And I'm delighted to have President Provost Sperling here with us today. But you know that we move this forward into an institutionalized concept, which is the academic compact, of which you are the officer in charge. Because the idea is that you have to have an institutionalized relationship between universities and the United Nations, not just as accredited NGOs, but as specialized and special accredited NGOs. And so you have more than 24 universities now which are accredited NGOs, and I think you have a list of about 400 universities that are linked to you in the academic impact. So congratulations to you, sir, not to me.
Thank you. I was told actually by Matt, who's a former student of yours, that in one of your classes, you offer the students a choice of three options. One, that you would talk about the subject at hand. Two, that you would talk about your life. Or three, that you would tell them jokes. And evidently they chose number three. So do you have one ready for us now, or would you like to pause for a while?
No, I mean, once I was walking into the United Nations and one of the ambassadors stopped me at the entrance and said, "Ambassador Kamal, tell us some new joke about the UN." And I said, "How can I tell you a joke? This whole building is one big joke." But then my problem is that I am a very outspoken person. I don't always tell the truth, but I do tell everything in an outspoken voice. And that includes my conversation with my students, including students at Fairleigh Dickinson. And so in one of these classes, we were discussing climate change and pollution and things like that. And I made the mistake of coming out with a sentence really on the spot to say that in the United States, Americans love their cars more than they love sex. And the next day, this was on YouTube. So, moral of the story, be very careful of what you say to students at Fairleigh Dickinson.
I know it gives a wholly new interpretation to SUV, but anyway. But, sorry. I think at this point I'm going to share the honors for the evening. There are a number of potential tandoorists, if you will, in our midst who would like to talk to you. His Excellency the Ambassador of Saudi Arabia, sir, please.
Ambassador Perfection, good evening. I came to New York only a few months ago, and I was being prepared for my first meeting with Ambassador Kamal, and I asked about him. So some of my colleagues came to tell me about Ambassador Kamal. Now, in Saudi Arabia, we have a relaxed attitude about time. Pretty much like the French and the Italians and many others. In French, they have bonjour and bonsoir. They don't have good afternoon and good evening and good night and all the in-betweens. So 9 o'clock in Saudi Arabia is approximately 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So the first thing my fellow diplomats in the mission complained of was your insistence, Ambassador Kamal's insistence on punctuality. Many of them attended courses given by Ambassador Kamal. I didn't believe how serious that issue is until today, because when I sent my driver at 2 o'clock to check the place out, he found Ambassador Kamal sitting here already. Now, Ambassador Kamal doesn't refrain at all from sharing his experiences. He is a man who has been with prime ministers, with foreign ministers, with diplomats, but he loves sharing his experiences, including with young apprentices. it doesn't hurt if the young apprentice is of the right gender, of course. Knowing his statement now about his French upbringing, I think that's even more understandable. And finally, I heard one of those days about those little gadgets that translate languages immediately on the spot. I was walking by and I heard something that speaks in French, in Arabic, in English, in Russian, in Urdu, in Pashtun, in Hindi, in Italian, in this, in that. And I looked for that instrument. There wasn't any. There was Ambassador Kamal speaking in all of these languages. He is a man of unique characters and unique characteristics, but one of the greatest of which is his integrity, his intellectual acumen, and his ability. And in the first few weeks of my being here, I must say I learned a lot from Ambassador Kamal. So I appreciate it, and I value your friendship. Thank you very much.
The joke in the United Nations is that you do not ask Ambassador Kamal how many languages he can speak in. You ask him how many languages can he be silent in. And the answer is none.
The distinguished ambassador of Afghanistan, sir, please.
Just the angle of the mic.
What a great evening. It's an honor to be here. Ambassador Kamal is known. It is, I can say he has been seen by many colleagues who know him in the UN as a high mountain of diplomacy. And I think he belongs to the last generation of the Cold War ambassadors. And we know how they work. It's a roast. And so I'm coming from a very serious culture. And in a good relation that Pakistan and Afghanistan have, I also have to be a little bit diplomatic. But I'm asked not to be. When I arrived in the United Nations, I met Ambassador Kamal in front of the elevators of the second floor in the old building near to the delegates' lounge, which used to be the coffee club of the ambassadors, which used to be the main room for political gossip, not only between the diplomats, but with farmers also. Ambassador Kamal invited me for a lunch. He knew me, and he was known, of course, to everybody. I was possibly a little bit naive and new, and I said yes, but I didn't know Miss Ambassador Kamal sufficiently in details that I should know. And at that time, which we are not far from, we were not used to the Google search on people, which we do it with our iPhones in a minute now. But back to my office, I asked about Mr. Ambassador Kamal, and the first answer from my first colleague was, "Oh, Ambassador Kamal, the godfather of the Taliban." And the second answer was, "Oh, he is the man who wanted to give the Afghan seat to the Taliban and why?" So I was a little bit shocked, but the story was not new. Of course, I'm talking about the first incarnation of the Taliban. And so we then met in the fourth floor, in the delegation dining room. And by the way, he had his own place there, overlooking the East River. And nobody could sit down there when Ambassador Kamal usually received his guests. And it was a time that he was free, a free man. He was himself. He was Ambassador Kamal. He was not Ambassador of Pakistan. So, and then he was an academic. And I wish to be in such a situation, to speak in such a free way that he tried, and he was speaking. But I found him a man half of me when we talked about the region. He had a very different looking outlook, a worldview about the region, about the people in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. It was far from the worldview of any Taliban, any extreme groups. His understanding, as he just said, was how to have a better, how to make the region a better place. So I was deeply impressed by his eruditely deep thinking about the region, the culture, the people. So I found a man who was who was trying to present an alternative solution that we always forget. And he would like to see how we can modernize our region, how we can uplift the condition of human condition, political condition, in a way to get rid of extremism and fundamentalism. We continued these discussions in different forms. He has been a questioner, which is an important position, which you control the debate through that. And in his unitar famous interviews. So I think we had the same view. We shared the kind of views that was raised today. He is thinking about a different world, a different UN, he's also dreaming about a different America. But I think I'm very happy to be here. What I learned, that he represented Pakistan in the way Pakistan wanted. But when it comes to Ambassador Kamal, he is the man with a knowledge, a worldview that we all share with him. Very good to be here, and thank you very much for organizing this evening.
May I now call on Undersecretary General Ambassador Sheikh Diarra. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me tonight. First of all, allow me to pay a special tribute to FTU for the 10th anniversary of its Pathways program, which allows it to open up to international matters and also to the United Nations, that has the legitimacy of representing the overall international community, all member states of the international community. Let me pay a special tribute to Professor Michael J. Adams for having contributed strongly to this program. Dear colleagues, excellencies, talking about my friend Ambassador Ahmed Kamal, you have read his lengthy and very rich resume. One can say without any risk of being mistaken that he is a true living diplomatic encyclopedia. He has done it all, from disarmament to global trade, from religion to budget and administration, from new technologies of information to habitat in cyberspace. He has seen it all too, since his graduation in 1959 from the Institut d'études politiques of the University of Paris, from the Cold War to perestroika, from the fall of the Wall of Berlin to the globalization, and from the typing machine to the iPad. Ambassador Kamal have survived it all. This shows his resilience and tenacity. He has survived because he always put himself into question. He likes to bash himself and to bash about others, and particularly the United Nations. He has done so also by opening himself to the most innovative ideas, especially from his interaction with the scholars, with universities, and with the brightest minds. Ambassador have overcome the test of time. He has resisted all challenges he has been confronted with, except one. He has never been able to cope with the spontaneity and the very straightforward style of Ambassador Burganin Aitimova, our very able and impressive chairperson of the International Association of Permanent Representatives. Ambassador Aitimova have the quality of always being where you expect her the less. And Kamal and I, when we attend the meetings of the executive committee of the IAPR, we always hold our breath whenever she speaks until we know what will be her next move. And by the time we know it, it's already too late. She has done it. So I believe, Ambassador Kamal, that your next challenge, if you accept it, would be to anticipate the next move of Ambassador Aitimova. We will call it a mission accomplished the day you will realize this daunting task. And until then, please consider yourself to be on a very, very important and very serious mission. Ambassador Kamal, I like your honesty, I like your truthfulness. You're a genuine friend and an unparalleled mentor. Once again, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'd now like to move to a series of virtual ambassadors, if you will, ambassadors from various sectors of learning and professional science to the United Nations, and in a sense representatives of the United Nations to those fields. And I'd like to begin with Jeff Laurenti of the Century Foundation. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Ramu. I mean, I should begin by noting that Ahmed Kamal has impressed me into being a fixture of his various classes. I become, in effect, his punching bag. Because let me start by saying that I have to puncture the myth that Ahmed Kamal has carefully cultivated about himself in order to fool Fairleigh Dickinson faculty and students into filling his classrooms. What's this myth? That we have here a master of diplomatic subtlety, knowing how to be able to forge deals in seemingly unbridgeable differences, a tribune of freedom and democracy in a world where the rich and powerful trample on the poor like grass, not even knowing they're stepping on it. Don't you believe it? Among Western ambassadors at the UN, Kamal is known as Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, or at least the scourge of the West, a slash and burn critic of Western power, Western hypocrisy, Western indifference, a hint of which we heard in this dialogue that Ramu skillfully drew out of him. He brings me to speak to his classes. Last fall, he had me speak to a group of all the younger Arab diplomats arriving just ahead of the General Assembly session who didn't yet know the UN, and I was to be the victim about the nefarious behavior of the United States at the UN. So he introduces me and he poses the first question. Why are you persecuting Muslims in America, throwing them in jail, keeping them in places like Guantanamo just for being Muslims? Huh? Well, immediately I was kind of put on the defensive with this audience, and I was never able fully to recover. But you know, if there's any diplomatic deal that's in the process of finally being done, Kamal will blow it up. If there were any nuclear disarmament treaty coming close to fruition, he'd find a way to derail it. As the Pakistani permanent representative to the UN a dozen-odd years ago, he conspired with his Italian colleague to organize a coffee club, innocent sounding, a group to thwart India's and Germany's and Japan's ambitions to become permanent members of the Security Council. Thank God he did, perhaps. But he is an extraordinarily subtle thinker, even if he is a quite direct, upfront, in-your-face bomb thrower. After all the pious speeches that we will hear, that we heard even tonight about democracy on the global stage and the nefarious four powers that are thwarting it, it turns out that in his heart, Kamal is a fervent believer in dictatorship. And any students who've actually taken his class through to the end finally realize that the basic principle of that encounter is tyranny. I finally discovered that he only brings me to these classes to be his American punching bag. And yet, I keep going back. Now, you could say that this is pure masochism, but no, in this exchange, because I do dish it out as much as I get it in these encounters, I think that there is a learning, particularly for American students who often seem totally insulated from how the rest of the world sees us and how the rest of the world understands us in ways that we do not understand about ourselves. And in this kind of exchange, Ambassador Kamal reveals what to most Americans are secrets. It again is like walking on grass and not knowing whom you're stepping on. And I would say one final tribute to Ambassador Kamal, the outspoken and vociferously anti-American, anti-Western representative of Pakistan. He's now become a U.S. citizen.
Thanks, Jeff. Michael Sperling, sir, please.
Well, I'm so glad to learn of your citizenship. I'd like to see proof, but I know in spirit it's real. It's really a pleasure to be here for many reasons tonight, to celebrate Kamal and also to be back at Fairleigh Dickinson. It's really the mark of something great and most rewarding when you're in at the beginning and it goes on and flourishes without you. That's really the heart of something that takes root and has a real life. So to have been here at the beginning, to have worked with Kamal at the early days of the UN Pathways program, and to see it flourishing even more so now is such a great pleasure. After I left Fairleigh Dickinson, I moved on to Manhattanville College as provost there. And when I arrived there, they said, I talked about my history with building a relationship with the United Nations and global education. And I said, I certainly would love to continue this work at Manhattanville College. And they said, you know, this is a wonderful coincidence because we're very focused and growing our relationship with the United Nations and with global education. And they said, we even have an ambassador teaching classes on campus now. And I said, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you have a connection with the UN. And they said, would you like to meet the ambassador? And of course, I said I'd love to. And here he is, Ambassador Kamal. So despite my attempts to escape from Kamal and his clutches at Fairleigh Dickinson, I realized at that moment the true ubiquity that is Kamal. And he is everywhere. So when I moved on from there to Mercy College as provost. I didn't even ask them if they had a relationship with the United Nations or an ambassador. I immediately realized that we needed to establish one. Having given over to the ubiquity of Kamal, I contacted him right away and asked if he would, in fact, come to campus and work with the college, bringing some ambassadors to campus. And of course, in his generous way, he said, yes, absolutely. So he came to campus, and you can imagine the reception. When I introduced that we were going to have a true internationalist coming to campus for our first opening faculty seminar day, I was able to say that not only are we having the former permanent representative from Pakistan, we are also having an ambassador from France in the same person coming to campus. And this really intrigued them. It was very impressive, and of course he didn't disappoint. Ambassador Kamal is really masterful at making diplomats believe they have a choice when they're responding to his questions. They actually have no choice. They do have a little bit of a choice, but the choice is not whether to respond or not. The choice is to what degree of substance they're going to respond, but they must respond. Kamal, of course, has a brilliant way of asking a question and demanding a response and doing it with a smile. One of the ways that was this sort of apocryphal moment for me was when I was with Kamal and he invited the Iranian ambassador to campus. This was actually back at Manhattanville, and this was in the former reformist regime, so the ambassador may have had a bit different stance than a current might. But we sat there in a panel discussion like this evening, and after a little bit of silence, everybody quieting down, Kamal opened the program by turning to the ambassador and saying, so Mr. Ambassador, how does it feel to be a representative of the axis of evil? You can imagine that this left the audience rather breathless, and it left me rather breathless as well. After a few moments, thankfully, the ambassador had a big smile on his face and began laughing. But we had a few moments there where we thought we had not only two ambassadors on campus, but a diplomatic incident in the making. I'm sure any press that were in the room were really, excited about this moment that something really interesting was going to happen from their point of view. But thankfully, it was just a very enlivening discussion and no more. I just want to close by saying that Kamal is a friend to so many, and really a devoted friend, and so devoted to education. You hear his spirit coming through again and again. That mixture of a Socratic method and stand-up comedian has a way of disarming people. And Ramu, you've seemed to have matched him wit for wit tonight, I might add. And that's a really disarming way to approach the questioning on very difficult, very challenging topics. Kamal has a way of bringing ideas to people that's really masterful. And for that, I so appreciate it. I cherish our relationship over many years and our friendship, and I hope it lasts many longer. And should I move on to any other university, you'll be the first one to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Dr. Friedrich Holzappel, please.
Since I learned about this event, I prepared three speeches. One, it turned out, was too long. The other one wasn't roasty enough. Ambassador Kamal told me it must be a roast. And the third one I didn't like. So very briefly, and very comforting for Fairleigh Dickinson University, Ambassador Kamal is a very cautious driver. He's also very methodical and very persistent. I understand that quite some time ago, he was driving through an intersection and noticed, as observant as he always is, that there was a camera taking a picture of his car. Well, he felt comfortable that he didn't speed, but he wasn't sure. So he went around the block and went through the intersection again. And again, there was a shot of his car by that camera. He did not give up. He did the same thing several times more at an ever decreasing speed. The last one so slow at a snail's pace that he was almost stopped by a policeman for driving too slow. And then he finally had convinced himself this traffic camera must be broken. And he went home, safe and sound, everything was fine. About 8 weeks later, 5 letters arrived from the traffic court, all with the same citation in it for driving without a seatbelt.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Kamal has asked for the right of reply.
Yes, indeed. I would like a right of reply. Because ever since I joined the citizenry of this great country, I have been subjected to deep cultural shock and intellectual confusion, and tonight is no exception. I was told that this was Saint Valentine's Day, and that it's a day for pink roses and chocolate and kisses and all the nice things of life. I had no idea that Valentine's Day can become a day in which you pick on a poor individual like me, fry him in a saucepan, convert him into Kentucky Fried Chicken, finger-licking good, and feel good about it too. I've already told you about the false pretenses. I was told there was going to be a statue of me on this podium. There's no statue. Now, in a way, all this is understandable and normal because my problems with Fairleigh Dickinson started 10 years ago. It's been 10 years of great agony. Fairleigh Dickinson, first of all, does not understand that it is located on the wrong side of the Holland Tunnel. And that getting ambassadors from the civilized part of the United States, which is Manhattan, to come out this way through that tunnel during peak hour requires a commitment to faith, which most of us mortals do not have. And so that is the UN Pathways part of it. Then you have my second experience with Fairleigh Dickinson, in which this university decided to honor me, like today, honor, quote unquote, by electing me as a trustee of the Board of Governors. And I found that they expected me to work in that board. Now, I had spent my life in France building up a theory that work is bad for the health. And so I sought the first opportunity to pull out of that board and to relax again in my normal French ways. Then Fairleigh Dickinson continues to confuse me with its wordplay. In the beginning, it was easy. You had Madison and you had Teaneck. Then they decided to change the name, and it became Florham and Teaneck. Now it has become, then it became Florham and Metro. Now it has become CAF and Metro. And I do not know which is which any longer. And so I almost drove to Teaneck today thinking that this function was going to be there. All this is Fairleigh Dickinson. The smartest person in Fairleigh Dickinson tonight, by far, is President Michael Adams. He pleaded sickness and stayed out of the evening because he probably knew that I might launch some slings and arrows at him also during the course of my right of reply. But that being said, I would like to comment on the others. I don't want to comment too much on Ramu Damodaran. He comes from India. You are Americans, and you know what is the definition of the only good Indian is ... Here was I, invited to an evening which I thought was in my honor. And I enter the main door, and there's a huge board which says, India. That is Ramu Damodaran and his doing. Then you have Ambassador of Saudi Arabia, Ambassador Al-Muallimi. He is just getting his own back. This is his revenge. Because the first time I interviewed him, he thought I was going to be pleasant, and polite to Saudi Arabia as the center of the Islamic world. And so I shot my first question at him by saying, why don't you allow women to drive? He has never forgiven me for that question. And tonight was his occasion to get proper revenge from me. Then you have Ambassador Tanin of Afghanistan. You know what is Afghanistan and Pakistan relations. You know that the Afghans believe that everything that is happening in Afghanistan is because of the Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI, of which the representative is Ambassador Kamal. And so he thought this was a good occasion to teach me how to suck eggs. Ambassador Diarra is a different story. He comes from Mali. He was the former ambassador of Mali. And he knows that in a previous incarnation, I was handling a fund for digging wells in West Africa, which was undergoing great drought. And he knows that I dug more wells in Mauritania than in Mali. So he decided that this was his occasion to get his back today. Mr. Laurenti we can ignore because he's an ugly American. Dr. Michael Sperling is another story altogether, because by now I hope you know that he is the real father of this entire program for UN Pathways, etc. But the real story behind Dr. Sperling and myself is that he had a most attractive assistant, Dalila. And both he and I were in love with her. And so he was constantly jealous of me. And he doesn't know that I was even more jealous of him. And so this is a relationship of jealousy and of nothing else but. And that brings me finally to Dr. Holzapfel, for whom I have really undiluted respect. And it is difficult for me to point any fingers at him, because he is the person who really introduced me to Fairleigh Dickinson. And so if you have students here who are unhappy with what I've been doing at FDU, he is responsible. The happiest person here tonight is my wife, because she has been terrorizing me for 49 years. And this was her occasion to get even by getting other people to put me on the spot. And you can see the smile on her face So to conclude, Mr. Chairman, I have received all these thorns from you and everybody else, but I do want to know, it is Valentine's Day, where are the roses? Thank you.
I would like to call, here he is, to the podium now, Acting University President Sheldon Drucker.
Thank you very much. Will Ambassador Kamal please come back to the podium, please? We have a president.
What now?
Oh, we have a presidential citation for you, and excuse me if I read it because it's quite long, and it fits you very well. Whereas His Excellency Ambassador Ahmad Kamal is a valued, loyal, and long-standing friend of Fairleigh Dickinson University. Whereas Ambassador Kamal is the founding president and chief executive officer of the Ambassadors Club of the United Nations. Whereas Ambassador Kamal is a dedicated teacher and scholar and exceptional raconteur. Whereas Ambassador Kamal has served the international community for more than 50 years, first as a professional diplomat, and then as a senior fellow of the United Nations Institute of Training and Research. Whereas Ambassador Kamal has served for 10 years as architect and host of the United Nations Pathways series at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Whereas Ambassador Kamal is an inspiration to all of us who know him, and for his dedication to global education and enlightened diplomatic discourse. Let it therefore be resolved that Fairleigh Dickinson University does hereby congratulate and celebrate its dear friend and colleague, Ambassador Kamal, with this presidential citation. Presented this 14th day of February 2012 at the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Pathway Gala dinner in Lenthal Hall, the College of Florham, Fairleigh Dickinson University, signed J. Michael Adams, President.
It is now my honor to present Ambassador Kamal with the medallion. This is my big chance.
Two of our students would like to say a few words. We have Sarah Horn from the College of Florham, and Ms. Jera Sufina Asli from the Metropolitan Campus. Will the students step forward?
On behalf of the Office of Global Learning and Fairleigh Dickinson University, we would like to present Ambassador Kamal with a token of our appreciation.
Ambassador, do you have any parting words? If not, we'll let you eat.
I've kissed two pretty girls, so you can, you can eat now. The night is young.